Hello friends, welcome to the third episode of Watercolor by Mayur. In our last episode, I had asked you that which one do you think is the most important tool for watercolor? Is it paper, color or brushes? According to me, the answer is brushes. Why brush is the most important tool according to me? Reason number one, brush strokes are the signature of every artist. We identify Van Gogh, Rembrandt, Turner or Monet from their brush strokes. Reason number two, watercolor painting is created with strong and weak washes, dark and light blending of shades, dry brushing and more washes. This is only possible if you have brush that can hold enough watercolor and can transfer it on paper. Cheap brushes are unable to hold much water, and so the watercolor effect is impossible to achieve with these brushes. According to my experience, after I switched to good watercolor brush, my painting started looking way better than before. So in this episode, we will look into brief history of painting brushes, how watercolor brush is different from oil brushes, anatomy of a brush, different hair types used for making watercolor brushes, different shapes of brushes and their uses, different sizes of a brush, how to take care of your brush, and when is it time to buy a new brush and retire an old friend. So grab a cup of tea or coffee because this episode is going to be very interesting. Let's start with brief history of painting brushes. Brushes were used by humans as early as Paleolithic period to apply pigment. Our ancestors used sticks, split palm leaves, bones, and even wood shavings to depict the world around them. In historical times, the early Egyptians used brushes to create their tomb paintings, while the ancient Chinese employed the tip of a long-haired brush for calligraphy. By the 15th century though, quills were the favored style of brush, using soft hairs or bristles. These brushes could only be round, and for centuries they dominated the painting world. The flat brush was only invented once Industrial Revolution started and makers started experimenting with brushes. It was the Italian painter, the Cennini, who mentioned about the modern day brush in Craftsman's handbook in year 1390. After understanding brief history of brushes, now let's understand how watercolor brush is different from oil or acrylic brushes. As a beginner, next question I always used to ask myself was that what is the difference between watercolor brushes and oil or acrylic brushes? After all, they are brushes, right? Wrong. Difference number one. Watercolor brushes are designed to absorb more water compared to acrylic or oil brushes. Difference number two. Smoother and finer hair of watercolor brushes paints soft and even tones on paper, while oil brushes with their stiff hair paints rough tones that creates patches. So watercolor brushes are for sure designed to do watercolor painting specifically. Now let's look into anatomy of brushes. Yes, even brushes have anatomy. Brushes are made by a bunch of natural or synthetic hair stacked in a metal mold of different shapes, and then they are being tied together. The hair is glued together in a metal or plastic pipe which is later attached to a handle. The top part of hair is called tip, the middle part is called belly, and the end part of hair is called heel, which is inside the metal pipe. The belly, as the name would suggest, is the broadest part of a brush hair. It's more visible on a round brush rather than a flat one. Bigger the belly, more watercolor it holds. Mop brush holds more water because it has big belly. The metal or plastic mold is called ferrule. The ferrule is the part that holds the handle and the hairs together. It's usually made from metal, but mop brushes, for instance, can have a ferrule made of synthetic and wire. A decent quality ferrule won't rust or come loose. The part which joins the ferrule with the handle is called crimp. The lower part is called handle. The handle of a brush is most often made from wood that's painted or varnished, but it can also be made from plastic, or in Chinese brushes, it could be of bamboo. The length of handle is variable, from really short for travel sketching to really long, which is ideal for big canvases. What's more important than length is that brush feels balanced in your hand. You are going to be using it a lot, so it needs to be comfortable to hold. On the handle, you will find writings which consist of size, shape, name of the company, brand or series of brush, etc. This information can vary across the companies. The next and most important is different hair types used for making watercolor brushes. The most important aspect of a brush is the hair. There are so many different hair types used to make paint brushes that selecting the correct brush for your creation can be a confusing task. Each hair type has a specific quality and can be used for different purposes. There are two basic differences when it comes to brush hair. Natural hair, which comes from various animals, and synthetic hair, which is made out of nylon and polyester. The natural hair brushes are expensive than synthetic hair brushes. The major difference between natural and synthetic hair is that the natural hair brushes tend to hold more water than the synthetic hair brush because of their hair structure. Let's first see that how many different kind of natural hair is being used. Kolinsky sable hair. The top class watercolor brushes are made out of Kolinsky sable hair. These highly sought after brushes are amazingly strong, springy, and have an ability to hold very fine point or edge over time even when loaded with paint. Kolinsky sable hair comes from the winter coat of a certain type of marten, a mink-like weasel that is found in Russia, Ukraine, and northern China. These brushes are very expensive. Red sable hair. Red sable refers to other members of the marten family that can be found in the Ukraine and Romania that have a reddish coat. The hair from these animals are marketed as red sable and are sought after by watercolorists for their absorbency and resilience. A high quality red sable brush is considered an excellent alternative to the much more expensive Kolinsky sable brush. Squirrel hair. There are two types of squirrel whose hair is commonly used in brush making. Both types make brushes that are used for watercolor painting and lettering. The grey squirrel, commonly marketed as Russian squirrel hair, is used to create very long liners, lettering brushes, and quills. There is a high level of demand for these kind of brushes, and unfortunately it has fallen into short supply. The brown squirrel or Kazan is more abundant than the grey and is considered mid-range in terms of quality. This hair is taken from the squirrel's tail and is very thin and fine in nature. It's commonly used in making mop brushes used for watercolor. Goat hair. Goat hair brushes have excellent water holding capacity but cannot hold point while loaded with watercolor, so it is being used mostly for wash brushes like hack brushes and mop brushes. As goat hair is easily available, these brushes are cheaper alternative to sable and squirrel hair. Ox hair. Ox hair brushes are used for watercolor and works especially well for the application of watercolor washes. The hair to make these brushes comes from the ears of oxen or cattle. The nature of ox hair is strong and durable like the animal it comes from and maintains the shape of the brush well. Ox hair has a soft texture that is not effective at maintaining a fine point. It is quite common for a brush to be made of a combination of ox hair with other natural hairs to increase the versatility of the brush. Pony hair. Brushes made from pony hair are being used for acrylic, watercolors or gouache paintings. Hair are strong and resilient. These brushes are often sold as a cheaper option for beginners or for child brushes. Camel hair. Camel hair brushes do not in fact contain hair from camels. Camel is a term used for brushes made from squirrel, goat, ox, pony or blend of these hairs. Camel brushes are always soft brushes intended for thin-bodied media like ink and watercolor only. After natural hair, let's look at synthetic hair. Synthetic hair brushes are more versatile and can be used for all mediums. The hairs are man-made using polyester or nylon filament called Teflon. Synthetic hairs can be engineered to increase color carrying ability, absorbency, or to soften the texture of the hair to recreate the unique qualities of natural hairs. Synthetic hairs are stronger and more resilient in nature. The strength of synthetic fibers also make them suitable for use on almost all surfaces. Synthetics just generally stand up to the wear and tear of painting, maintaining their initial shape and a sharp edge for a much longer period of time. Now let's look at different shapes of brushes and their uses. There are two basic shapes in brushes, round and flat. There are a lot of modified shapes like spotter, sword or dagger, rigger, cross flat, fan, filbert, mop, etc. But the basic shapes are round and flat brushes. Let's understand the difference between painting with round brush and flat brush. Difference number 1. Round brush is the main workhorse brush of the watercolorist. When you paint with round brush, you do not get edges or corners, while flat brush creates edges and corners. So round brush is good for painting organic shapes like circle, curves, human figures, etc. While flat brushes are good for painting houses, fences or mechanical things with sharp corners and dry brushing techniques. But with scrubbing on wet paper with flat brush, edges and corners could be avoided. This way, even organic shapes could be painted with ease. Difference number 2. Round brush have its wonderful point, which allows you to paint small details and delicate lines, as well as when pressed can paint broader strokes and washes with the same brush. On the other hand, it is very difficult to paint details with flat brush. But for filling up big patches and wetting the paper quickly, flat brush is better. In flat brush, you also get varieties like long flat and short flat or brights. Long flats generally used by sign artists as they hold more color and even longer lines could be drawn easily. Short flats or brights have shorter heads, giving a stiffer brush strokes that will hold less color, but they keep their shape well. Now let's look at some of the round brush shapes widely used in watercolor. Mop brushes. Every watercolor artist should have these brushes. As the name mop suggests, a mop brush will hold a large quantity of fluid paint. It is a soft and floppy round brush with big belly, which is ideal for large watercolor washes and has a fine point. The head is fixed to the handle with polythene bound with brass wire. Polythene is used because it doesn't harden with age. The standard mop head could be of squirrel hair, goat hair, synthetic or sable hair. Squirrel mops in the larger sizes are ideal and used for creating big washes. Spotter. A spotter brush is like a small round brush with shorter bristle for extra control with sable or synthetic hair. Also called retouching brushes, they are excellent for minute details and are very commonly used by miniature artists. Rigger. A rigger or a liner brush is a thin brush with extremely long bristle. A normal round brush runs out of paint, while rigger, with its extra long hair, is ideal to paint long lines. These may come to a sharp point but can have flat or square tip as well. These round brushes were originally designed for the marine artist to paint a line of rigging in one stroke. Rigger brushes are ideal for painting thin branches of trees, boat masts, cable on street, etc. Now let's look at some of the flat brush versions. Filbert. A filbert is a narrow flat brush with hairs that come to a rounded point. Used on its side, a filbert gives a thin line. Used flat, it produces a broad brush stroke without corners. And by varying the pressure as you apply the brush or flicking it across, you can get a tapering mark. Angle or chisel. These type of brushes are made similar like a flat brush, but the hair is aligned to give an angle. Originally made for sign writers, they are favored by a lot of watercolorists. The chisel brush is ideal for painting thin and thick lines. Hack brush. A hack is a flat brush designed for wetting paper or applying big washes. Its goat hair head is stitched in the oriental way into a split wooden handle. Fan. Fan brush was initially made as a blending brush for oil painting. The end of the ferrule has been flattened to fan the hair out. Fan brush, when wetted, clots into several mini brushes. It is used to create tree and foliage effects. Sword or dagger. A sword brush is a bit like a rigger or liner brush, but is steeply angled rather than pointed. You can paint an extremely thin line by using only the tip, or a wider line pressing it on surfaces. By loosely holding the brush and painting, you get a free expressive marks. Chinese brushes. Chinese brushes were originally designed for calligraphy writings. These brushes have excellent water holding capacity and it comes to a sharp point, but you have to make sure about the quality before buying one. For example, these brushes which I had bought earlier are excellent in holding water but kept losing hair and are of no use. On the other hand, these brushes are excellent in quality and I use them regularly. Water brush. A water brush is like a combination of a fountain pen and a brush. You need to fill up tank with water. A slow, constant flow of water comes down the brush's bristle as you use it, and you can get more by squeezing the reservoir. Water brushes are useful for travel sketching. It is impossible to apply big washes with these brushes. Now let's look into different sizes of brush. Selecting a brush size is rather straightforward. Large brushes are good for bold strokes and washes, small brushes for detail work, and mid-sized brushes for both. What brush size you need also depends on what size of painting you are creating. Sizes range from 0 right up to 50, but you won't need most of them. If you are buying brush online or from a catalog, and it's a brand you are not familiar with, check to see if there is a measurement of the actual width of the brushes in inches or millimeters, as various brand sizes can differ a lot. For example, these both brushes are of same size, but there is an enormous difference in the way it will paint. I hope you must have got complete idea about watercolor brushes after seeing this video. But a lot of you might be thinking that what is the most basic set of brushes one needs to start as a watercolorist? So here's my suggestions. 3-inch flat brush with goat, ox or synthetic hair for big washes. Number 12 mop brush with squirrel, goat or synthetic hair for laying out background washes and foreground larger shapes. Number 8 mop brush with squirrel, goat or synthetic hair for painting foreground large patches and details. Number 6 round brush with sable, squirrel or synthetic hair to paint foreground details, figures, etc. Number 3 round brush with sable or synthetic hair for minute details and touch-ups. Number 4 rigger brush with squirrel or synthetic hair for painting tree branches, electric poles, path lines or fences, etc. Set of these brushes will help you start your journey. And never buy expensive stuff in the beginning. Gradually invest as you get hold of the medium. Hope this will help. Please subscribe to my channel and press the bell icon to learn watercolor step by step. We'll meet next week with the interesting video of last two subjects of how to take care of your brush and when is it time to buy new brush. Till then, keep painting.